We want a medal.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting of the Wilson County Board of Education to order for May 17th, 2021. And welcome everyone to this meeting. The meeting is being held remotely through the Zoom video conferencing platform with the following board members present in the boardroom: Mrs. Boyette, Mr. Boykin, Mrs. Powell, Mr. Mercer, myself, Dr. Fitch. Mrs. Barnes is participating remotely, and Mr. Breen is running just a few minutes late, but we do expect him. The meeting is being televised on Spectrum and Greenlight Channel 22 and live streamed through the Wilson County Schools YouTube channel. The public can also view the meeting through the links on the Wilson County Schools Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages, and the Wilson County Schools website. Please note that based on Executive Order 2009 from the Governor, 209 from the Governor, face coverings are optional and not required to be worn during today's board meeting. Face coverings are still required for public school units, but board members will have the option of continuing to wear their face mask, and members in the audience. The executive order also lifts capacity limitations and social distancing requirements. Therefore, in accordance to action taken at earlier board meetings, the June 7, 2021 regular board meeting will begin at 6:30 p.m. and will be open to the public. Committee meetings will resume. At that time, board members will not be spread distantly, but will be seated together here at the front table. And with that being said, the chair will call for the approval of the minutes. The approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell.
I move that we approve the agenda for the May 17th Wilson County Schools Board of Education meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Schwartz?
for the closed session, could you add an item D, consult with legal counsel?
So before we take action, members of the board, please add under the closed session, consulting with the board attorney. Regarding legal matters, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Will the maker of the motion accept the addition to the agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
Will the seconder
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
motion, it has been moved by Mrs. Powell, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve the agenda with the addition of an item under the closed session to be item D, consulting with board attorney regarding legal matters. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Please record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
And myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously 6-0. Mr. Mercer, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to be followed by a moment of silence, please.
Yes, ma'am.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the board, we have on the agenda calling for the approval of the minutes We have minutes of April 19th, 2021, a regular board meeting, and May 10th, 2021, special board meeting. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I move that we approve the minutes of April 19, 2021 regular board meeting and the May 10th, 2021 special board meeting.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Barnes, seconded by Mrs. Boyette, that the board approve the minutes of April 19, 2021 regular board meeting and May 10th, 2021 special board meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
And myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously 6-0. Under the chairman's report, just a few items for you. First, let me take the opportunity to welcome Dr. Kendra King back to Wilson County Schools. She had been with us previously. She now joins us as the Executive Director of Student Services, and this is her first day with us. If you will look on your screen, you will see Dr. King in one of your pictures beside Dr. Wilson, currently on my screen. Welcome. Thank you so very much. Let me take the opportunity to congratulate, on behalf of the board, the WECA and Watt students who graduated this past Saturday from Wilson County Schools. On this Friday, Wilson Community College will have its commencement, and the students from WECA will receive their second degree. They will receive their associate's degree at that time. So we congratulate the students, but we also congratulate the parents, and we thank our faculty and staff for the outstanding job that they have done with the students. We look forward to the upcoming graduations of our 3 traditional high schools on June the 12th, weather permitting, or our alternate date of June 19th. So if the weather is as good as it was this past Saturday, we will be able to have our graduations outdoors. Parents were very happy, families were very happy, and we would be practicing safe distancing and everything else. As we come to the close of the end of this academic year, we take the opportunity to thank our teachers and staff for the work that they have done under circumstances less than what any of us had desired. Having transitioned back to face-to-face instruction. And we wish all of our students well on the upcoming exams. Some exams have already been taken, but we know that we're in the season of our final exams, both state and our local. So we wish all of the students well. We thank the parents and families for all that they have done in this time. In his absence, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Breen on being named to the 2020 Pro Bono Honor Society for serving clients who are unable to pay without expectation of a fee. The award comes from the North Carolina Pro Bono Resource Center, and Mr. Breen is one of 589 attorneys across the state who have earned this annual distinction. So we congratulate him on his work in his professional field. Since last we met, we had the ribbon cutting at our newest WASH clinic at Hunt High School. This now makes 3 clinics that are available to our students and staff. We thank all of our partners and our maintenance staff for the work that was done in getting the clinics up and running. A yeoman's task has been completed, and we're happy to be able to offer the services to our community. Awards Day have begun, and the early colleges had theirs at the beginning of the month prior to their graduation. Pike had Awards Day today. Hunt has Awards Day tomorrow. and betting fields will be on June the 1st. We hope, Dr. Mills and staff, if somehow when the awards are given out, and I think the principals do an accounting of the amounts that are given, we hope that you will make note of the benefit to our students and the amount of awards that have been received. In the past, it's been quite impressive, and we are sure that even in these COVID times, that our students will have done well. So with that, I am done with my remarks. I thank you, and I will turn over to the superintendent for his report.
Madam Chair, board members, and others, I'll piggyback on a few items from Dr. Fitch, but we did have the graduations for the early colleges on Saturday. Couldn't ask for better weather. We had 35 graduates from Watt, 46 graduates from WECA, and we certainly wish them all the best in the future and the community college graduations coming up. I will say those were probably some of the most efficient and briefest graduation ceremonies we've had in a while. And they came at a time when it would have been bearable to stay up there longer because the weather was so good. But really nice day, and it was good to see families and good to see our students out there. We celebrated Teacher Appreciation Week, May 3rd through the 7th, and it's always good to say thank you again to our teachers for how amazing they are each day to take care of our students and be a part of our family. I want to thank our PTOs and families for making our staff members feel special during this week. We had a good time at the central office putting boxes together with goodies and delivering those, but also a special thanks to brewmasters for continuing their generous tradition of providing lunch not only for teachers but for all the school system staff at no cost. So please thank the folks at Brewmasters when you get a chance. That is amazing. I'm always blown away by that. You've probably also seen the teacher appreciation video that featured our current kindergartners, the class of 2033. Oh God, that sounds weird. Class of 2033. As they answer questions about teachers, I'll send that out. It's on our website and social media sites. I think it'd been even more fun to ask even more questions because those were some pretty unique answers, but they did a really good job. We've had other folks celebrated since our last meeting. It was Administrative Professionals Day on April 21st, Occupational Therapist Month in April, Principals Day on May 1st, Nurses Week, May 3rd through 7th, and School Lunch Hero Day on May 14th. So we appreciate all these staff members that make up a really great school system and the things they do for our students and districts. So if you see any of those folks, tell them thanks as well. We've got some other announcements that are time of year things that I always look forward to. This month, we announced the 10 top finalists who are in the running to become the 21-22 Wilson County Schools Teacher of the Year. The finalists are Catherine Foley from Bettyfield, Christy Edgerton from Frederick Douglass, Casey Hare from Hunt, Morgan Willis from Lucama, Lauren Stott from Rock Ridge, Matthew Straub from Spade, Haley Baxley from Springfield, Christine Boswell from Wales, and Karen Carlos from Watt, and Jay Long from WECA. These are outstanding teachers, and we know that whoever's selected will represent us well. The winner will be announced soon, and we're keeping that date a surprise. And so there's some information to be forthcoming about that, and Ms. Lynch is the contact for that. It's also the time of year when we announce the finalists for the Wilson County Schools Principal of the Year. The principals, there are 6 finalists. The principals this year in the running are Annette Faison from Frederick Douglass, Eddie Dahl from Hunt, Zach Marks from Lucama, Valerie Budd from Spade, Jenny Hayes from Vincent Bynum, and Randy St. Clair from WECA. The winner also will be announced soon, and congratulations to those leaders for being selected as a finalist. Last month, I shared that Major Scott Biddle with the Wilson Police Department was retiring, and we thanked him for his service and how much he's always supported us and been a part of our family. And right after that, I wanted to share the announcement to congratulate him on becoming the new police chief effective June 1st. Congratulations to him, and we certainly thank Chief Hopkins for his service for the past 11 years, but Major Biddle, now Police Chief Biddle, when the time comes, will be a great partner with us, and we look forward to working with him. So pretty quick retirement for him, good for us. Dr. Fitch mentioned the wash clinic ribbon cutting. You know, the wash clinics wouldn't be possible without the really generous funding from the Healthcare Foundation of Wilson. They've been supporters of those from the start, and the Anonymous Trust that helped out with some additional monies at Hunt. The Healthcare Foundation of Wilson has contributed to all 3 clinics and has provided more than, this is impressive, $1.1 million in funding. So that is a no small feat, and it's a really big part of how we've gotten where we are to have 3 clinics now in our school system. And for those of you who had a chance to tour the one at Hunt, it's really beautiful. You would not know you're in a school, and it's each time we've done it, we found some changes we can make. The Anonymous Trust provided $100,000 for the Hunt Clinic, but we want to especially thank the Wilson County Health Department and the Wilson County Department of Social Services for providing the staff. Also, some of this came from Wilson Forward. We're looking through the Youth Master Plan, but I really think the wash clinics are something that set us apart and have really been important for our students and staff over the last several years, and we're excited about seeing Hunt up and running. Finally, I wanted to wish all of our students good luck, and parents as well, as state testing begins tomorrow and our school year comes to a close. You know, it's really been a challenging year, but we've come a long way from a year ago, and I look forward to continued progress. And Madam Chair, that's my report.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mills. We now move to the agenda, item 6, public input, discussion from the public. We have no one who signed up for today's meeting. So we will now move to item 7, discussion, information, action items. And the first item is contract for board notification.
Board members, the one contract for notification is for Johnson Controls fire alarm contract. It's a rollover. That amounts to $35,309.47. That is under the threshold, so this is for information. Mr. Letchworth is here if you had some questions about the Johnson Controls and fire alarms.
Any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, installation of a storage building at Forest Hills Middle School. And let me take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Breen as he has joined the meeting. Thank you.
Well, I'm working on joining the meeting. Somebody's got to let me in.
I can't share and do that, so 1 second. Lord have mercy. Here we go.
We congratulated you
Thank you.
before you arrived.
Yeah.
Yes, we did on your,
Congratulations on your vacation. Well, thank you.
All right, now I'm back. Okay. Board members, the installation of storage building at Forest Hills Middle School, this is really for information. Mr. Letchworth is here and Dr. Williams have been involved with that. We have gotten approval for the building structure and installation. The total cost of the project is less than $6,000. Maintenance will be supervising the project's completion for review and compliance. And this is for your information, but the building will be used for storage with the athletic fields up there on the hill as you go up towards the football stadium.
okay. Any questions or comments? Then we'll move on in the agenda with item C, transportation updates. This is Dr. Williams and Mr. Harvey.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have Mr. Harvey on the line, and he will provide the transportation updates for today. Mr. Harvey.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Our transportation updates are as follows. First is activity buses. We have received our 2 activity buses that were purchased this school year. They've been painted with our Wilson County colors and decals on them and both have been delivered to the garage. That brings the total of 5. That brings the total to 5 activity buses that we have purchased since the 2016-17 school year. 2 of those activity buses are handicap accessible, and the other 3, each high school will be getting a new activity bus to replace one of their older ones, starting with next school year.
So this will keep our activity bus total at 5. It's just that we'll be rotating some out.
Yes, ma'am. We'll take, each high school currently now has at least 3 activity buses that they use for travel. We'll be taking the oldest of those 3 buses and replacing it with a new.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Mr. Mercer?
No, did he have further information regarding?
Well, that was just
That was
on
about the new buses.
the buses, yes. So if there are no other questions on the new activity buses, Mr. Harvey, if you want to get into the bus driver salary schedule.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Williams and I, we've had some conversations about the driver pay scale and what is reflected are the changes. Now drivers will be paid, I guess, at a more consistent rate, and it'll be easier to see how much they will make based on the years of service they had. The previous salary structure was a little ambiguous, and you couldn't really tell, and it was very hard to make sense out of. So this one has been simplified, and it accurately reflects the years of service they had versus the pay that they'll make. This, the new salary structure is in line and allows us to be competitive with other surrounding counties, and hopefully it will go a long ways towards improving driver retention.
Well, that would be wonderful. You know, we changed our process of not making them have to wait if they were hired in between board meetings and other people being able to entice them away after they had gone through training and all with us. And so now this is another item in the toolkit to hopefully keep those bus drivers with us. Thank you. Mrs. Barnes? Yes?
My question is, what is the average number of hours a bus driver drives during the course of the day? I know it's going to fluctuate.
I would say your average will be right around between 2.5 and 3 hours. And like you said, it does fluctuate depending on lengths and locations of routes. But that would be an average if you put all of our drivers together.
I think we're very fortunate to keep them with the minimum number of hours they can make and with the minimum salary. So I just applaud our bus drivers.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Boykin?
I just wanted to say that I really like the way that this is set up. It gives a definable goal as far as time served. I would like to see a small increase from 13 to maybe 14. I feel like there's a lot of people hiring right now, and I think that would go a long ways towards recruiting and keeping bus drivers.
So are you asking that they look at and consider a change from years 1 through 14 at that where they start at 13 and they go up at 14 at 15 years? Or are you just asking for the starting to be more at 14 and not 13?
I'm asking that they review it and see if it makes sense for us.
All right.
But I think that would help going towards making sure it was worth our drivers' time to do it, especially knowing that some of them may have to have childcare while they're out driving.
All right.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Boyette?
In that same line, I would love to see us start at 15 and then go up to the, I see at the bottom that 1745 is the highest that the state allows. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, the state allowable is 1745 with supplement.
With appropriate changes up and down, like start out at 0 at 15, and then where it goes up to 1325, go to 1525, or what the administration would recommend. But of course, I need to know some figures on how that would impact, but I would like to see us starting at 15. They
Yes, ma'am.
are, as I heard earlier this evening, they are our most precious cargo.
Well, I'm hearing the request for the administration to look at two starting figures at 14 and at 15 in order to see what would be most feasible if I am understanding correctly what you are
Madam
asking.
Chair, I'll fall right in line with Ms. Boyette.
Well, in falling in line with Ms. Boyette, Dr. Mills, Dr. Williams, and Mr. Harvey, if you would look at review of our salary scales for our bus drivers to see if there is a possibility of a starting salary of $15 an hour and making moves accordingly. And I'm sure that if that is feasible, you will bring that to us, and if it is not, you will bring that to us as well.
Yes, ma'am.
We've looked at some other scenarios, but we can run those through and adjust and see what our driver population looks like
Okay.
based on the years and bring that back to you.
All
The
right.
impact, and I would suggest while we've got the numbers out, doing it, just do both and have a range. But to get to the maximum piece, we can look at some of the intervals and do that.
Okay.
Run it against our current fleet drivers. Sure.
Mr. Mercer?
I have no problem with us looking at starting at a higher amount. I had noticed that, I guess it appeared to be a typo, but year 19 was 1450, and it looks like it should have been 25, if just being consistent with this particular arrangement.
Yep. Odd one out.
Because it was in 5-year increments, and it almost works out if you start at 15 and go up a quarter a year. There's 8 levels, so you would be at 1675
You get to the top.
if you went a quarter each 5-year period in there.
One of the factors that made me suggest this was Mr. Borkin was sharing that he went through the McDonald's, and McDonald's is paying, how much did you say?
The one that I went through in Williamsburg this weekend was at 14.
The one in Wilson advertises starting to pay at 10. I drive by there every month.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I totally agree with with looking at the change in the starting rate, at least $15, because that's the reason why I asked the question about the average number of hours, because we're really lucky to keep them at the minimum pay, because I was talking to the manager at Bojangles, and they're having trouble finding people working there, and so in order to get workers, I think we're going to have to look at some increases.
All right. I think we have given the administration the marching order to review this again and to come back with what is feasible. Thank you so much. Next item on the agenda, are there other questions or comments in regard to the bus driver schedule pay? Thank you, Dr. Williams and Mr. Harvey. Next on our agenda is the Wilson Community College Board of Trustees appointment. Members of the board, you know that we have 4 seats on the Board of Trustees for the community college. Our current appointments to the boards and their 4-year expiration dates are as follows. Mark M. Johnson, June 30th, 2021, this year. Kenneth Jones, June 30th, 2022. Dr. Carol White, June 30th, 2023, and William Thomas Tom File, June 30th, 2024. Mr. Johnson has submitted a letter of interest. First, he thanks the board for its appointment, and he indicates that he is interested and willing to serve another term, as has been our custom. Board members will have the opportunity to submit the name of a person or of their choice for the June meeting consideration. We are asking that if you have any other names other than Mr. Johnson, that you notify the superintendent's office by May 28th of your nomination. And this will be for consideration at the June board meeting. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, we're going to move to the next item, which is Title I eligibility for 2020. And that's Dr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, you have in your packet a chart. Dr. Mills is pulling that up. And I also have Ms. May online as well.
All right. And board members, you also were given an additional handout from Dr. Wilson that she's going to make reference to. Mrs. Barnes, if you don't have that, that will be on the screen in just a few moments.
I sent her an email.
Oh, you have it by email. All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. May, would you like to start sharing?
Sure. Good evening, board members. So the data that you have before you represents the historical poverty data of our schools from 2014-15 through this current year. So as you all know, each spring in April or May, we complete the eligible school summary report in Power School. And this data in this report determines which of our schools are eligible for Title I funding in the upcoming year. This year, since school nutrition has operated under a waiver related to COVID this year, DPI and the federal government granted us the waiver in federal programs to utilize the 1920 data to determine Title I eligibility for 21-22. So that's why you see the same set of data in the column for 2021 and 21-22. So all of our schools that were eligible this current year for Title I are eligible next year, with the exception of Rock Ridge. You will probably remember last spring we discussed Rock Ridge's data, and they were grandfathered in as a Title I school for the current year, 2021. A school can only be grandfathered for 1 year. That grandfathering clause does not apply for 2 consecutive years. So therefore, Rock Ridge is no longer eligible for Title I funding. Are there any questions about that before we move to the additional reference page that was provided for you?
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Boyette?
Ms. May, can you help me understand from 2019 to 2020, if I go down and look at that column of eligibility, and then I move to the 2020, 2021, every one of them decreased except for the 2 that were at 100. So help me understand why there's such a significant decrease in each school. I mean, some of them went from 1 point at Forest Hills to 30 at Vincent Bynum and 28 at Gardner's. Help me understand why there's such a decrease.
So Each year, we have to pull the data in the spring, and those variances in the data, to be honest, Ms. Boyette, are sometimes difficult for me to understand as well. I think one key point to point out is with all of our elementary schools, the data that you are looking at is direct certified data. Which means, we pull, for Title I purposes, we pull all of our data from school nutrition. School nutrition provides that data for us. But for our CEP schools, it's direct certified data. So that is the percentage of families that are receiving some type of direct assistance from either the state or the federal government. And I know Mary Catherine is on the line as well, and she might be able to add to what I just said about that. But, when you look at this data, I think it's important to know that for our non-CEP schools, which are Spate and Forest Hills and Toys Not, the data you're looking at is from free and reduced lunch applications. For all of our other schools that are CEP, it is that direct certified data. So we're not, we as a school district don't collect that data. That data comes to us from another agency.
I thought that we had discontinued the free and reduced lunch applications when we went under the broad net of CEP and the like. So when you speak of free and reduced lunch applications, did we reinstitute the taking of those applications?
Ma'am, you are correct. So the application data that I speak of is actually data from not the school year that we're currently in, but 1920 school year.
It's always a
So
year.
we didn't.
It's always a year
1920?
behind.
You mean 2020? From the 2019, 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, because when you said 1920, I wasn't putting that hyphen in between there, sorry. Okay. Does that answer your question, Mrs. Boyette?
Yes, it doesn't make me like it any better, but I just, from what the data is given to us at the elementary level from the CEP schools, and therefore the data is what we're given,
yes.
not what we generate. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell?
I see that because we're losing Walker Ridge. I'm curious to know on the average about how much funding do we receive per child? Is there a way of knowing that?
So last year, when we decided on the per pupil allotment, which is what I think you're referring to, our Title I schools, so we do tier that amount. So our higher poverty schools get a greater per pupil amount than our lower poverty schools.
Right.
So those amounts last year ranged from $1,400 per student to $1,300 per student.
Thank you.
So if there are no other questions about that, I would like to point out a couple of things on the additional information sheet that was provided to you. So we provided this additional information sheet to you to provide some information about looking forward into next school year, and when we make these decisions next school year, what data we will be utilizing. So we found out somewhat recently that the seamless summer option waiver, which is USDA waiver number 85, has been extended through June 30th of 2022. So what that means from a school nutrition standpoint is that meals will be provided at no cost to families through the entire next school year, 2021, 2021, 2022. Our community eligibility ends this year, June 30th, 2021, but that will have no impact on the meals being provided free because that seamless summer option is going to pick it up. However, what that means for Title I eligibility next year at this time is that we will have 2 sets of data to look at for determining Title I eligibility. And those 2 sets of data will be free and reduced lunch applications, or that direct certified data that we just talked about comes to us from other institutions. So even though meals are going to be provided free of charge next school year, we are going to ask our families to complete free and reduced lunch applications. These will be available online and paper copies. We've listed on this paper some of the benefits for families of filling out the application, because it seems kind of odd to fill out a free and reduced lunch application when you're already getting lunch free. But those applications do bring along with them other benefits, such as test fee waivers for the tests that you see listed there. Also, in order for families to qualify for a PEBT card, if there are other rounds of those cards issued, they will need to have a free and reduced lunch application on file with us. Free and reduced lunch applications also allow students to qualify for grants and scholarships, and of course we know that they impact Title I eligibility. So next spring, we will be looking at free and reduced lunch application data and comparing that to direct certified data to see which data set will be most beneficial to utilize for Title I eligibility purposes. Under the Title I guidelines, we can use either set of data, but we have to be consistent with what we use. Since none of our schools are going to be CEP, we either have to use free and reduced lunch application for data for all of our schools or direct certified data for all of our schools when we get to this point next year. So we just wanted to provide that information as we look into the decisions that we'll be making next year at this time.
Which one of the 2 options would give the broadest service to our students if we have to use one or the other?
So which set of data would give the broadest?
So that more of our students are eligible to receive meals.
So it varies. It varies by school and by demographic area. It's not really consistent throughout the district, so there's not one set of data that works best for all schools. I have looked at the direct certified data, the current direct certified data, and that in some cases does seem to be lower than the free and reduced lunch application data that we have from 2 years ago. But that's comparing direct certified data that's current with free and reduced data from a couple of years ago. So I think we're just going to have to look at that data next spring to see which scenario is best for the largest number of schools.
And the largest number of students?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mrs.
And
Barnes?
that's in reference to the benefits. What type of grants and scholarships are you referring to?
So a lot of the federal grants and scholarships that are available to students will ask for and look at whether families qualify for free and reduced lunch, and sometimes students and families will be scored for those scholarships based on those data sets.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Boyette?
2 questions. I'm very happy to see that the seamless summer option is extending the meals to our students at no cost for another year. Will that include Rock Ridge and New Hope, who are not Title I schools?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you're talking about qualifications for grants and scholarships, like, wouldn't the FAFSA form that they fill out for college, would that be beneficial, or is that the same thing you're talking about? You know, at the high school level, when they complete, they get together and do that, what is it, federal, the FAFSA form?
The FAFSA form.
That it'd be beneficial. I'm trying to, I think the challenge is going to be getting people to fill out the free and reduced lunch form when their children are in fact getting free and reduced lunch at every school. So anything we can do to get them to do that would benefit us. And so, am I correct that if you're getting free, then why do you need to fill out a form? And that's what we have to convince them.
Well, that's an issue we've had in the past of getting families to fill it out, and they may fill it out for the elementary child, but not fill it out for the middle or high school child. And so as we entered into this whole process of direct certified and all, that was one of the questions that was raised. If a family completed a form for the elementary child, was that information going to carry over to the middle and high school student as well? Because at the upper levels, families don't tend to do that. And so I agree that with us providing free meals to everybody, people don't want you to know that they have a need for free and reduced. So I think it will be very difficult to get them to do that if we're providing the meals. Dr. Wilson, you were...
Yes, ma'am. We are trying to be proactive in this measure and sharing our interest in getting families, because whether it's the free and reduced application or the direct certified, we need our families to complete either one of those. The same thing would hold true for the direct certified if they are like a younger student and an older student. They would be in the system and they would be connected together, even though one side may complete an application at the Department of Social Services. The same would be true for our free and reduced lunch application. So in Power School, they are connected by siblings as well.
Okay. Was that your two questions, Mrs. Boyette? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Boykin?
could we not just get everybody to fill out a free and reduced lunch form regardless of whether they need it or not? And then, you know, the ones that don't qualify just don't qualify?
Have you all ever taken that blanket approach to just give them to everybody?
Somebody speaking.
Who, is that
Mary Catherine.
Ms. Talton?
It is. I just wanted to speak to that. We, by federal regulation, cannot require anyone to complete an application, but we do encourage all and we make it available to all. And it does, as Dr. Wilson mentioned, it does go to every student in that household. The benefit is.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Mr. Boykin?
Mildly.
Well, I've, in the past, there's a number of us working with, of course, it's been a number of years, and sometimes it's not, has been said, it's difficult to get people to sometimes apply when they're in really desperate need of it. And to get everyone would certainly be good. I don't disagree with you, but it'd be difficult, I think. The question I have, would it be misleading when we request these to be filled out, that it be worded that in an effort to gather information and data to continue providing free lunches, we need this information. Would that be unfairly misleading? Because that is what we're doing, I think.
Correct. We are trying to anticipate not only for this year, we have a plan for this upcoming school year, for the 21-22 school year.
So-
What we're talking about is what we can do this year to plan for the 22-23, and really get that message out to the families as to how it can help them and help the school system and their school.
So if it's worded to, like you say, if they're already getting it, it's difficult to get them to apply for it, or even because someone of them would rather not be seen as being needy, I guess is what it amounts to, but, and I understand. But if it's truly an effort to gather information to continue providing that service, if that's made clear, I would think they would be more apt to respond and fill one out. If it's not unfairly misleading in any way, because I don't think it's misleading.
Well, I know that Ms. May and Ms. Talton and everybody involved will do their best to gather the data so as to be more impactful for our students and serve as many as possible to do so. We applaud you for the continued effort you have made to make sure our children are fed, for making sure that every waiver that is allowable and possible is applied for. And we thank you, as always, for the task that you have done in feeding the children through the summers and through the remote learning situation. The child nutrition staff is to be applauded for cold, rain, hot, whatever the circumstance, in putting nutritious meals before our children and families. And on behalf of the board, I certainly thank you for that effort and know that you will continue to work diligently for the best interests of the children. Other questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell?
I've passed Benson Bynum School on several occasions and see people standing out there with the carts, standing there, and it might not be anyone out there but them, but they're standing there in the rain or however the weather may be cold, waiting for parents to come and pick up their lunches. And I also want to applaud them for that. And also I wanted to ask you a question about the applications. Do we offer assistance in filling out the applications, or do we offer like a session, since that's something we do want to have the parents to fill out, but they may need assistance, I don't know. And applications over time do get complicated.
They can. So we haven't had to get the applications in a few years, but that's certainly something, they might need a training afterwards since they've not done it in a few years.
Yeah, it couldn't hurt, since we're saying we need to.
If they have on the application, there's a phone number to call
There
for
is.
assistance. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't already have that.
And
We also talked about going out into different areas of the community to take the apps directly to folks and groups to make sure that folks understand the need for it, and to try and cross that gap sometimes of understanding why we're asking for it and why it's important. So especially in areas where we know there's a significant need.
Okay. And I'm sure it's done in not only English but Spanish.
Yes.
And if we could start that period of gathering the information as soon as possible when the time comes, so we can more or less size it up, and if we need to kind of work to get a second wave of responses. Again, I'm probably not thinking of a thing that's not already been thought of for those people that manage it so well, but I really appreciate all they do too. It's all the food service people are heroes in my book.
All right, anything else? Hearing nothing, we thank you both so much, Ms. May and Ms. Talton. And we'll move to the next item. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, Revised Policy 2610, Board Attorney, first read. We're changing the share screen.
Had to change documents. Okay.
Okay. Dr. Mills.
Madam Chair, as an update to the board attorney policy, try and go back into a revision or review process more like some of the other services that we have.
All right. This basically calls for a 4-year contract rather than on a year-to-year basis. Okay. This is a information piece. It is first read.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell.
on line 26, it says chairperson of a board committee. Should that be board chair also? Because I noticed that those were changed in the earlier sentences.
The chairperson of a board committee may consult with the board attorney on issues that arise out of and in connection with the committee's work. I think it is the chairperson. It was intended to be the chairperson of the particular committee.
Oh, okay. I just noticed that board chair
Yes,
has been placed throughout, so chairperson of.
chairperson of a board committee
That's
in
okay,
this
board
instance.
committee. Okay, I see it now. Thank you.
Hearing nothing, this will come before us for a second read at the next board meeting, and we will move to revised policy 5210, distribution and display of non-school material. This too is an information piece. It is a first read. When I got to reading this, I went, ooh, ooh. There's a lot of red ink on this one. Some cross-outs, but a lot of additions. Members of the board, do you have any questions or comments in regard to this policy? It is a revised policy.
It's not incongruent with anything that we're currently doing, based on my reading and
No, but it
interpretation.
needs to be in policy, it needs to have the process outlined. I mean, that's really what this is. And this is an area where you get a fair amount of traffic, so it's important for us to have this so everybody understands.
The Boy Scouts can come with permission, but Marlboro still can't advertise at the school.
That's some of the things we run into.
Okay.
Yep.
It's more of a structure, the way that,
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this will come before us at the June board meeting for a second read. Now we are into the action items of the agenda. And the first item is the 2020-2021 budget amendments. Dr. Williams and Mr. Stanley.
All right, here we go. All right.
This first one, the all got before using the installment of the summary account. And it was first for primarily supplies, salaries, and benefits. The second one, about 7,196 for continuing February interest on technology, and it will be budgeted for supplies and equipment and that type of stuff. Any questions on that particular one?
Questions on Amendment 108? All right. Hearing none, Mr. Stanley, if you want to move into 306, the federal fund.
The federal funds primarily, the bulk of that is the ESSER 2 funds, that's 16 billion. It got budgeted for supplies, contract services, and direct costs, etc. We also got a little bit of additional money in target 98, target assistance 5,353, and then a little bit more additional in the DSEA title for 2019. We also just moved some money from we got $7,062 additional in improving feature quality. And all that got budgeted for basically aligning the budget with the expenditures that already happened.
All right. Any questions in regard to Amendment 306? All right, Mr. Stanley, if you will move to Amendment 807, please.
The Medicaid outreach, that was our submission money. We got $58,068. It was budgeted for excess children needs. We got the more for monthly checks of $34,056. We got fee for service, which is again, DC needs $22,301.25. Drive head fees that are collected at school at $65. That the kids pay for driver's ed. That is where it came from the school. WEP gave technology a $4,000 grant. They also sold some used equipment for about $1,511.95. And that's pretty much that particular one.
All right. Any questions in regard to amendment number 807? Members of the board, you've heard the report regarding these budget amendments. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Breen?
I move we approve budget amendments 108, 306, and 807.
Second.
It is, I had two voices for second. I heard Mr. Mercer and Ms. Boyette. Ms. Powell? Ms. Powell? Okay. It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded two times by Mr. Mercer and Mrs. Powell that we approve budget amendments 108, State Public School Fund, budget item amendment 306, the Federal Fund, and amendment 807, the Local Special Revenue Fund. Is there any question? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Borkin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously 7-0. And I make that clarification because the initial motions were with 6 persons present, and since Mr. Breen joined us at an earlier point, our numbers now changed to 7. Thank you very much. The next item is possible additional capital projects. Dr. Mills?
Madam Chair, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to pull up the document. I've made a revision to what was sent out.
All right.
Size here. Hold on.
And did you send an email to
I did.
Mrs. Barnes?
I did.
Yes, I
I
received
emailed
it.
everybody.
All right, thank
And I've
you.
got it here for everyone too, just for clarity. All right, let me get back to my share screen. It is, okay. There we go. I'll make it a little bit bigger. The packet had the same list of capital projects, but I was going to share that the Hunt project had already been approved by the board for the track. So I've just added it to the top so it's reflected on one page.
Okay.
So the board had asked about possible additional capital projects that we could request that we could start work on right away this summer. And so we've got some of those in there. Mr. Letchworth, Dr. Williams, Mr. Woodard, and I met with county manager and assistant county manager last week to talk a little bit. The first several projects, the one asterisk at Hunt has been already discussed and approved by the board. Lee Woodard and Barnes renovations, that was in the last packet that we shared with you. That will be those renovations that the architects have gone through and looked at that, and that was along with our discussion about facility planning to look at, we had 4 schools that were architects reviewed, so there's 2 right there of those. And then we also talked about a paint cycle for the schools at our last meeting, and that's the, Mr. Letchworth's given us that estimate of what a 7-year cycle would be for all of our buildings. So the other items are items that we felt like could be worked on beginning in the summer and were conversation pieces. And of course, the board needs to weigh in on these or any others, but were projects that were related to, in a sense, the Fight tennis courts. We've talked about the Hunt tennis courts, and those are underway. New Hope's secondary driveway is a safety issue that we had talked about a while back. And also some of these focus on middle and high school would not be affected if the board was looking at facility plans or ORID and school assignments. So that you would be able to go ahead and undertake some of these projects without discussion about how buildings may be utilized. So these are for your review and input.
Now, this is a discussion action item, so we'll begin by asking you, do you have any questions or comments?
Is the New Hope secondary driveway, is that the plan to go through the back?
Mm-hmm. You could go all the way back. You've got all those cars stacking up on the road, and we have that property now all the way through the back.
So for the listening public, the question was, did this include extension of the driveway all the way to the back? And the response was...
This is a separate entrance
Separate
coming off
entrance from the back.
Okay.
from those apartment,
backside.
that road back there.
Mhm.
We could come in all the way up to the back of the building, not straight to the back of the building, but come in from that side.
Right.
And you could look at that being stacked up there versus in the road at Pack House. And also, that's a school that if you want to do renovations on or be a part, you know, it's at capacity. It's going to be at capacity, so it would be an investment piece.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mrs. Barnes?
This is probably ancient, but when I was at New Hope and taught in the late 90s, tires were delivered to the school in the back for, it was athletic purposes, I think it was. Have those tires been removed? Because I thought about it since leaving New Hope, if they've been destroyed or moved.
Yes, ma'am.
I haven't seen it.
Did you hear Mr. Letchworth's response, Mrs. Barnes? He said,
I did not.
he said, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair.
Who, Mr. Borkin?
So yeah, I just want to say that, yeah, I've got, as important as athletics are to our schools, you know, we've just done several high school athletic projects, and yeah, a big portion of what we're being presented with today is athletics. And yeah, I can't help but wonder if we shouldn't be putting more emphasis on the buildings themselves and, you know, critical infrastructure that's in these buildings rather than focusing so much on the athletic piece.
Well, you've got a mix in there, and there a case could be made for that approach too. I think this is where we need the board's input. We've got the plans that, you know, we keep up with, and I think part of the conversation needs to be if that's the case, you want to focus more on the actual buildings themselves, then they're going to be at the middle and high school level. We've done some of the elementary. If you look at where the impact will be from your last meeting about facility planning and looking at capacities in our May 10th meeting, then we can certainly bring those back. This is, again, some of the conversation was things we could start and do in the summer.
Would-
So some of those things would not be as easy to do over time.
When I look at the capital projects, yeah, I think to myself, I would like to see projects that we could ask for funding for, that's not gonna pop up all of a sudden and have to come out of our general fund. Whether it be, septic pumps or electrical switch gear, eventually, these things are gonna have to be replaced. And if the county commissioners are willing to, oblige us in that, I would much rather do that now and it not end up being a pop-up issue in the future than renovating, what's this? Adding 6 athletic restrooms.
I think the board's got to give us some input then about what you want to focus on, because the input we got was looking at projects we could start with, and I think any request we make right now is a good start to go back through. Again, if that's the approach the board wants to take, we can come back and look, and the prioritization piece is going to have to be a conversation piece with the board, because you're going to deal with facility planning. So you're going to have to make some decisions ahead of some of the work, and I talked with the ORD folks last week. So, that's fine to do, we can do that. So, again, this is a starting point. So,
Well, I can only speak for myself,
Yeah,
but I would like to see the funding more so.
we actually
towards
talked about that when we were
buildings.
working on it, and I think this is a starting point. So if these things, some of these, again, we've already shared Lee Woodard and Barnes with the county manager. So that's, right at $3 million. The painting would be one, and that's the piece. You've already talked about the track. So you're looking at, $5 million before we add anything really to it. So that's a significant chunk. But I think if that's the case, then we can go back and look and bring back to you middle and high school interior kinds of renovations, if that's what you want. We've done a pretty good job about looking at roofs and internal equipment, things like that. The last one that went was unexpected, and again, that's the kind of things we do hold back on and have done that. But I think we just need some more specific direction from the board to come back with what you'd like to see. This is a mix of it.
Other members of the board, questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Boyer?
I understand what Mr. Borkin's saying, but I see those as more the long-term requests that we would make of things that we would start in future years, like not this summer or next year. Whereas I like the things on this list because a lot of them are things that can be seen from the exterior of the building. And as parents and students are looking at our facilities and thinking about whether they're going to go to a charter school or a private school, these are some things that they can see and be enticed to stay in the Wilson County Public Schools or come to the Wilson County Public Schools. So there's certainly no guarantee we're going to get anything on this list, but I am pleased with the list. So,
Madam Chair.
We did have that conversation too. We did.
Mrs. Barnes and then Mr. Mercer.
I saw this as a good mix because we have looked at replacing roofs and paving, and I saw this as well as getting the middle schools and the high schools, I hate to say it, out of the way, but address those needs, and then we can really, really address elementary, and then start talking even more in the mix about instructional needs that we need, that we have.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
You're welcome.
I agree with Mr. Boykin that it's kind of spread the wealth thing and try to do as much as we can for all the students. I also agree with Ms. Boyette regarding the appearance. But in addition to that, we spent 2 years trying to get started on and get some motion on the athletic aspect. And we've only gone part of the way, in my opinion. And I just feel like that if we don't finish, and I like this list too, but if we don't go ahead with the athletic component, which the county commissioners visited and went on tour and saw that, and they were interested in making some headway on those areas. At the same time, I want us to get past that and get to I reckon the more intrinsic, or the things that we're more about. Because it's more than athletics, although that's what we have to deal with. And we're expected. And the sad thing about it is, people will get more upset, the general public will, over athletic issues than they will academic issues. I mean, they'll circle the wagons, go after you when it comes to athletics. But with the academics, there'll be concerned people, but they aren't as determined or as massive. So I think this is good, and I think we need to, personally, we need to take this list as a working spot or beginning and prioritize, and then present to the county commissioners. Here's what we see, and this is the order we would like to approach it from. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Mrs. Powell, do you want to?
Chime in?
Yes.
Yes, I do agree with Mr. Boykin. Athletics, you think of that as not being as important, or, you know, you look at other things. We have so many things. I was just looking at the facilities plan that we have that we need so much assistance on, and it just depends, because you're not going to make everyone happy, but we have to start somewhere with something. And I agree with Mrs. Boyette about it's important too for when we want people to come to our schools. We have to make it visible. I always say, let's beautify our schools. Mm-hmm. Let's make it to where they say, oh, I want to go see, I want to go in that school, I want to see what it looks like, you know, to make it beautiful to the eyes and make it enticing, you know, for them to want to come in and see the school. And I always look at safety as an issue too, about the entrance, like New Hope, and I was looking at the facilities here at Elm City. Frederick Douglass is one needing a change entrance drive for better traffic flow. It's always important getting the kids to the school safely and getting them out safely. That's always, see, that's where I prioritize things, looking at the safety of the school, getting the kids there and getting them back, and maintaining the classrooms. So it's difficult because everyone has certain, you know, priorities more so than other people. And I think, you know, it's just like we said earlier, we have to start somewhere, and we want to start with the elementary schools. We started with athletics, and now we're starting with the elementary schools. But I'm okay with the list, and want us to just move forward so we can go on and continue to the other schools.
All right. Mr. Breen?
I guess my first inquiry would be whether or not how much input Mr. Letchworth had in the creation of this list.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
How much input did you have in the creation of this list?
Myself and Dr. Mills were involved through the whole process.
Oh, well, then I'm satisfied, because you are our facilities management guy, and know what, if any, kind of imminent needs we may have in our buildings. I like the list, the way it's structured. I like I'm okay with this being the priority in which it goes. These are all projects that people in the community have asked me about and lobbied for. And as far as something to submit to the county commissioners, letting them know, you know, what we'd like in the near future. And that, again, doesn't discount our long-term 5 and 10-year plans, but letting them know what we want in the near future, knowing that we're going to ask for things down the road. I think this is a good starting place.
Well,
Madam Chair.
Mr. Mercer?
When Mr. Boykin, looking at the list, it does appear to be heavily waited for athletics, but part of that's due to the list. I looked at it, and there's about 40% of what's on here is would include Lee Woodard renovations, barns, the painting cycle, and things of that nature. About 60% was otherwise. So it still is leaning towards athletics, but the number of items on here at athletic would make you think it was more than that. But it's about 60%, 60-40, generally, I believe.
All right. Okay, now, I think the heading for this sheet says it all. Possible additional capital projects.
Yeah.
So that there is not a guarantee certain that this is what we would get. And at the top of the list comes the Lee Woodard and the barns, the renovations, as well as the comment that was made about the paint cycles. So this is for us to decide if we want to give this to the county commissioners, but it does not say that we will get the additional capital funds. So if we have exhausted the discussion, I think everybody has had an opportunity to give their comments. The chair will entertain a motion in regard to the possible additional capital projects as presented by the administration.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Breen?
I move that we present the Wilson County Schools possible additional capital projects 2021-2022 to the county commissioners.
So
It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve the Wilson County Schools possible additional capital projects for 2021-2022 to the county commissioners for their consideration. Is there any further discussion?
I do have one quick question. The substance, I agree with entirely. Does this list imply any priority according to, by its order, or?
When we were approaching this, we thought it'd be best if we ordered them based on priorities we would look at that we could do and manage. And so any change in this order, I would definitely want to hear from the board about what you might want to do.
And I don't have a question about that, but it just hadn't been mentioned.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not suggesting a change, is what I'm saying. I just wanted to know.
Based on the conversations we've had, we felt like these might fall on those lines.
And I think there's been some good work put into it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote in regard to the motion. Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Borkin?
No.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Dr. Fitch? Aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries 6-1 with Mr. Borkin casting the dissenting vote. Next,
I have a question, Dr. Fick.
Mrs. Barnes?
I wanted to catch Mr. Ledgeworth before he left to find out how our auction that we just had went. Did we get much proceeds from that? And I know it's not big enough to build anything with, but I just wanted to know.
Yes, ma'am, I'm seeing if I can pull up the data now.
This is the surplus items auction that Mrs. Barnes is referring to. Am I correct, Mrs. Barnes?
That is correct.
All right.
I know they got at least $15.
At least 15?
At least 15.
No, well then, hey.
That comes from your bank account.
It sure did.
We're well on the way.
We did better than that.
We did better than that.
That wasn't a backhoe you bought.
No.
We did have some people asking about some of the items and wondering why they were in there, but we commingle with the auction, so some of those things that, like people were asking about, how come so many baby strollers and some other things? And I was thinking, I don't really have a good answer, so I had to go look. When I talked to Mr. Letchworth, they do that to keep some of the costs down, combine things and then divide it out. So some of those things were not. So before you wondered, why do you have a whole row? We didn't. But it was well attended.
That's great.
You'll give me just a minute.
Yeah,
I'll pull
Mr.
it up.
Letchworth's got it because he shared with me. I don't have my copy here.
I'm upset I lost that Schwinn bicycle.
I had, no, I gave it away. It was the latest bike.
While he's looking, will there be an additional option within the school year, yay, nay?
Probably.
It depends on the amount of surplus and if they have another one planned.
Yeah.
Okay.
This one was so well, I don't want to jinx it. I'd wait a little bit. I mean,
Okay.
honestly, it was really good traffic.
That's good.
Yeah. I kind of want to wait a little bit.
The total of all three was over 36,000, but I can't remember exactly.
Can you hear that, Miss Barnes?
It was over
No.
it was over $36,000.
But
Oh,
child
That's
nutrition,
great.
Wait a minute, Ms. Barnes, finish your statement, Mr. Letchworth.
that was child nutrition and also CTE funds for equipment they had. So all of them added together.
Majority of it.
36 and all that.
Yeah, I think the majority of it went to maintenance side though, comparatively.
So did you hear the response, Mrs. Barnes, that that was a combination of CTE, child nutrition, and maintenance?
Yes, ma'am.
I did.
Okay.
I'll see if I've got that doc. Mark will have it, I know, but I've got it on my desk, I think.
All right.
You want to go through the contracts on?
Yes, we're going to move now to contracts requiring board approval.
Board members, we have a handful. American Reading Company, those are the modules for summer semester, grades K, 4, and 5. That's ESSER 2 funding being used for those. That's an amount of $98,000. Dreambox Learning, that's math software and services. That's also ESSER 2 funding in the amount of $138,600. And then the last one that deals with the instructional side is Lexia Learning Systems, LLC. That's the reading software and services. ESSER 2 funding for that. That's $176,500. Dr. Wilson, her staff can answer any questions about those three contracts.
Questions from the board? Mrs. Boyette?
So I see that the American Reading Company, that's the modules for summer semester. I got that. What about the math software, Dreambox, and the Lexia Learning Systems reading software? Is that just for the summer, or is that for the upcoming school year?
It's for the summer as well as the upcoming school year.
Yep.
So it goes year round? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And the modules are another term for units. American Reading Company uses the term modules. It's really just books in units. Books that would be about animals or the ecosystem or marine life. They just changed the word. We're used to the word units.
Other questions regarding the contracts? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion in regard to the aforementioned contracts regarding board approval. Please remember that reviewed by board attorney.
You need to do the rest of them before you do the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Got some more.
We can take them in chunks. That might be the easiest way to do it.
If you want to, that's fine with me.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Green?
I move we approve contracts for American Reading Company, Dreambox Learning Incorporated, and Lexia Learning Systems LLC, subject to review by the board attorney.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mr. Boyette, that we approve the American Reading Company, the Dreambox Learning Incorporated, and the Lexia Learning Systems LLC contracts pending board review and approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your votes. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
And myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously 7-0. All right, Dr. Mills?
Madam Chair, board members, the next contract is for DFA Dairy Brands, Fluid LLC, Pet Dairy. I think it should be Dairy.
Dairy.
I'm stuck now. For milk, I'm doomed. For $146,163. Miss Talton is on the conference with us, and she can answer any questions about this contract.
This is a recurring contract, correct?
Correct.
And are our prices staying stable, or are they going up?
They are staying stable. This is a new bid for this product, and it's within 2 cents of what we were previously paying per unit.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Ms. Talton, have we ever thought about maybe purchasing lactose intolerant milk or lactose-free milk? I know that's an issue with some students that are unable to digest lactose. And I don't know how many students we have now, because I knew that when I was teaching, there were a few. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, I know skim milk has less, but it still has lactose in it. So that's why I was wondering if we had ever thought about doing that.
We do currently purchase lactose-free milk. We purchased it from our mainline grocery distributor. They carry that milk for us, and then a student or a parent would submit a form saying that the student was in need of that. I think we have 4 or 5 students we're currently providing that to.
Okay. Thank you. I did not know that.
So that the number is not as large as this is our bulk milk purchase, and not, that's more a specialty with customization then.
That's correct.
And this is sort of along the same lines, but have we ever explored getting bottled water for the kids? And I know that everybody, water is readily available, because we didn't have water fountains for the bulk of the pandemic, and as far as I know, even now. I know Lucamo's got a water issue that we're attempting to resolve. But, my kids don't particularly enjoy milk, and I know that, sort of along the same lines of Ms. Powell regarding the lactose-free milk is, when I've gone to eat with my kids before, it's bizarre that water isn't an option.
We are not necessarily required to offer bottled water, and under the current waivers that we're under, the schools have been providing bottled water since they cannot use water fountains due to the pandemic. But typically we do have cups available to the students. Of course, Lucom will make special accommodations for them, but we do have cups available for them and ice should they rather have water.
All right. Any other questions in regard to the DFA Dairy Brands Fluid LLC doing business as Pet Dairy, not Dairy? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Breen?
I move we approve the DFA Dairy Brands Fluid LLC DBA Pet Dairy contract, subject to board attorney approval.
That one's already been approved. We're good on
Okay,
that.
well then we did it, yeah.
There we go.
Thanks.
It's
So
already
can
been
we-
reviewed, so we just approved that.
Yeah.
Okay. So it has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve DFA Dairy Brands Fluid LLC doing business as Pet Dairy. As presented by the administration, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Borkin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect the motion carries unanimously. Next, Safal Incorporated.
I'm glad you pronounced it, Safal.
How do you
Janitorial
pronounce
contract
it?
rollover, that's what I'm going for, which one? $256,800. This is a janitorial contract, this is a rollover as well.
Okay.
Any
And I
questions?
see it's for 3 years with 2 possible renewals of 1 year each.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Are there any questions? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion in regard to contract renewal for Safal Incorporated.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Boyette?
I move that we approve the contract with Safal Incorporated.
So,
It has been moved by Mrs. Boyette, seconded by Mr. Mercer, followed by Mrs. Barnes, that we approve the contract for Safal Incorporated at the amount specified by the administration. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect the motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Next is Herring Sutton and Associates for sewer pump upgrade at Rock Ridge Elementary. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mercer?
is this connected in any, still with the rescue squad, fire department deal that we had? This is completely separate.
It's completely separate.
I mean, not that it would matter. I was curious about that. Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion in regard to Herring Sutton and Associates regarding the sewer pump upgrade for Rock Ridge Elementary.
And this needs legal review.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Boyette?
I move that we approve the contract with Herring Sutton and Associates, PA, for the sewer pump upgrade at Rock Ridge Elementary for $173,390 pending attorney review.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Boyette, seconded by Mrs. Powell, that we approve the Herring Sutton and Associates, PA, contract for sewer pump upgrade for Rock Ridge Elementary School in the amount of $173,390 pending attorney review. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect the motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Next is Court 1 regarding tennis court renovations at Hunt or the reconstruction of Hunt High School tennis court.
Madam Chair, board members, in your packet, you can see there are two possible options for the tennis court at Hunt. One is the renovations for $201,277, or the reconstruction for $264,243. Our recommendation is for the reconstruction, so you can guarantee the foundation, the underlayment, and we think that's a better solution.
I agree. My question was going to be if that was going to provide the longevity that the other one might not, because it's expensive and we don't need to revisit it. anytime soon. So I agree, I'm in favor of 264.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to piggyback with Mr. Mercer. Yeah, I'd much rather go ahead and do it right the first time.
All right.
So,
I think you need to know both exist, and that's why they're there, but for what we're doing, the reconstruction is, it's not just peace of mind, it's just more efficient and more cost-effective in the long haul if they run into any issues.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
The renovation doesn't come with a guarantee
That's correct.
either, so that's significant.
Yep.
Okay. It's been pointed out that the renovation cost of $201,277 would have no guarantee for the work done.
That's even more.
Mark, do you want to talk about what the guarantee does provide?
Are we saying guarantee or warranty?
Well, doesn't come with a warranty, I'm sorry.
Warranty is what we mean.
Do you want to talk about what the difference is with the warranty?
Well, basically what we wound up with at Beattyville, we wound up doing summer reconstruction as well when we got in the middle of that one because of the sub base. So they'll stand behind the sub base and warranty the court for any defects on that end.
I had experienced a problem where way back, we had someone prepare a parking lot that was in a different company, paved it, and every time you had a problem, the paving people paved it right, and the prep people did wrong, or the prep people did right, and the paving did wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor of having it all under one umbrella like that, so that's good.
Was there a time frame, Mr. Letchworth, for the warranty?
I don't remember off the top of my head, there was a warranty in there.
1 year.
For 1 year?
Workmanship 1 year, I think.
Okay.
But usually,
Longer. The wear.
I would suspect if there was some faulty work, it would show up within a
1
year.
year, okay.
Hopefully,
All right.
show up in time.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing nothing, the chair will entertain a motion in regard to the contract for Court 1
Madam Chair.
for the tennis court reconstruction.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair. I move that we approve Court 1 contract for the reconstruction at $264,243.
Pending.
Second.
I think that pending board review, or has this been?
That needs legal
Attorney-
review.
Pending the attorney review.
Now, I see a note on here that this proposal is good for 7 days from May 12th, and today is May 17th. We need to have a review done and approved by the 19th in order to get this price. Is that the understanding, sir? Dr. Mills, Mr. Letchworth?
Yes, ma'am, and Brandon has the information that they needed to add the 2 lines in this afternoon, so
Okay.
he is aware of the time frame, and we have to execute this before tomorrow evening at close of business.
All right.
That's the rationale we've had with a couple items on the contracts from the packets and trying to get them in and stay within the bid window, the quote window we have right now with some of the pricing.
Okay.
And also legal review.
So it was moved by you, and it was seconded by
Ms. Hall.
Ms. Boyette.
Or Mr. Borkin.
Mr. Boykin, I'm sorry.
Either one, both of us did.
A double second to the motion then. Any other questions? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen? Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously, 7-0. And now we are at Southern Piping regarding the chiller replacement at Leewood Elementary.
Board members, that amounts to $174,423. Mr. Letchworth can answer any questions on that.
And this one also needs legal review.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, members of the board?
Just one. Who's Mr. Martin? on the letter that they addressed
I
us
know.
to.
It starts out Mr. Mark Letchworth, and then it says Mr. Martin.
You know, there's no need for name calling. He'll answer anything.
We'll make sure that person is aware that it's Mr. Letchworth. I don't know, we don't know who Mr. Martin
It's like the
happens to be.
diary, you know.
Well, my other question is, who's Progressive Design Collaborative Limited?
Limited.
All right, any other questions in regard to this contract?
That's a real question. Who are these people?
Progressive Design Collaborative?
Yeah,
Okay.
They're an engineering firm in Raleigh.
okay.
Yeah. They do most of the work with Southern Piping.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion in regard to the contract for Southern Piping Company in conjunction with PDC, Progressive Design Collaborative Limited, regarding the chiller replacement at Lee Woodard for 174-423. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I move that we approve the contract from Progressive Design Collaboration and Southern Piping for the project in the amount of $174,423 to provide the chiller replacement at Lee Woodard.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Barnes, seconded by Mrs. Boyette, that we approve the contract with PDC, Progressive Design Collaborative Limited, in conjunction with Southern Piping Company at the price of $174,423 for the chiller replacement at Lee Woodard Elementary. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Will the maker of the motion stipulate that this was,
Pending board approval.
all right, will the seconder of the motion,
Pending legal review.
legal review, Mrs. Barnes,
Pending legal review.
and Mrs. Boyette approves that second. So let me go back with that caveat placed in there. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen? Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Members of the board and the public, we are going to take a 5-minute break, please.
Sounds good.
Are all the mics now muted? Dr. Mills, would you mute all the mics? It must have been mighty important for Mrs. Morrison to say, I need a break. Ms. Boyette, I told you it was gonna get cold.
You're right.
I sure didn't trip right over this coffee sign.
It starts out warm, but it never stays warm in here.
I'm gonna mute everybody.
Tell me when you're ready.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we will bring before you tonight the proposed facility rental fees for 2021, 2022.
Dr. Williams, you're so on top of it. All I did was just tap the table to bring us back, and you're ready to plunge
Yes, ma'am.
right on in.
Ready to go.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, yes, ma'am. We bring before you tonight the 2021, 2022 facility rental fees for Wilson County Schools. These proposed facility rental fees are based on the current utility costs for Wilson County Schools facilities, and the facility rental for 2021, 2022 school year will be available on June 7th. And included in your facility rental fees are the proposed fees for 2021, 2022. These were last, these are updated from 2013. So the last set of fees we had were for 2013. So myself, Mr. Letchworth, and Mr. Woodard went through and just updated these based off of current utility cost.
All right. Members of the board, you have the report, and it shows that it tells us based on utility cost, and there is a price increase all the way around. So we'll start by allowing you to ask any questions at this point in regard to this charting.
I still think it's a honey of a deal.
It's a honey of a deal, according to Mr. Breen. Any other comments or questions?
I have a question.
Mrs. Barnes?
If the gymnasium at any high school is being rented, does that include the locker rooms if you had an event that students needed to have a change of clothes? Does that reflect in the rental of the gymnasium?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Barnes. If there was a need for locker room facilities, then there is a section of our facility use form, facility rental form, where they would just specify what needs they may have, and we would have a staff member to assist with that.
Okay, that should be done prior to the event, because in the past, having used those, they were not the cleanest in the world. So I just wondered if they had to be notified prior to that they would be used, that they would be in, a clean state.
Yes, ma'am. We have to have a 2-week notice of any facility use application so that we can make the proper arrangements on air if needed, lights, what parts of the facilities would be needed. And then 3 days out from that, we would then go ahead and set the energy calendar. So, yes, ma'am, all of those would have to be specified prior to the rental of the facility.
So even because her question was in regard to the locker space, and cleanliness of the locker space. So prior to the event, it would be checked for tidiness, cleanliness, whatever.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there other questions? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion regarding the 2021-2022 facility rental fees.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Breen?
I move we approve the 2021-2022 Wilson County Schools rental fees.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mrs. Boyette, that we approve the 2021-2022. I'm sorry, Ms. Powell.
I sound like this
We're cool, we have to get flags and little sticks.
There comes a point after a while that sometimes the voices just kind of meld together. My apology. It's been moved by Mr. Mercer. I'm sorry, by Mr. Breen.
You there.
I'm at that point. It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mrs. Powell, that we approve the 2021-2022 facility rental fees. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
can I
sir.
interject from a previous conversation quickly
Yes, sir.
about the breakdown of the surplus auction?
Yes.
Mr. Letchworth had given me the information, is on my desk. The breakdown is maintenance was $26,111.12. The CTE portion was $6,290. And child nutrition's portion was $754.37. So Mr. Letchworth was right about it, a little over $30,000.
All right.
Majority going to maintenance.
Thank you very much for that added information.
Yep.
I lost my points with having a break, and you got the chance to get the direct information, so it's all positive.
And I'll come back up.
Yes.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda is the North Carolina Alternative Schools Accountability Model. Dr. Wilson?
Yes, ma'am. We have the document that we're presenting to you, that this is a yearly document that we need to have you and Dr. Mills sign, stating that we're using Daniels as a part of the accountability model.
All right. And we are going with option B.
B.
Yeah, which is the one we typically do.
Pardon me, sir?
Which is the one we typically use.
Yes. Mhm. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion in regard to the North Carolina Alternative Schools Accountability Model.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Boyette?
I move that we accept option B as recommended by administration for the North Carolina Alternative Schools Accountability Model.
All right.
So,
It has been moved by Mrs. Boyette, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve option B of the North Carolina Alternative Schools Accountability Model for Daniels Learning Center. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Candace?
That was me. Aye.
Thank you. Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Mrs. Barnes, all heads kind of popped up
Man.
like,
That'll wake you right up.
where is she? All right. So that,
Sleep.
yes, we see. Okay, glad she's awake again. All right.
Madam Chair.
Mrs.
I'm
Powell,
sorry.
did I take the vote for that?
yes, you did.
Yes, you did.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
I had one comment, just something when I saw every student succeeds. I remember at the National School Board Association online experience, there were several presenters up there talking about equity, and they had experienced a lot from where they had gone from not having anything to where they're renowned. One man was actually labeled retarded, and he's now renowned. He's a speaker. He goes out and he shares his stories with different people. And there was one lady that was Cuban and black, and how she had succeeded. She started out working in the office, I guess as a trash lady or something, and now she's a presenter all over the world. And I know that equity is important to make sure that all our students succeed and they have equal opportunity to succeed. And I don't know if we have ever had opportunity to have someone come before us and present the equity plan for Wilson County Schools. And I know we have one. Is that right, Dr. Mills?
We do. We've been working
Yeah.
on one, and that is a topic we discussed at our RESA as well.
Yeah, because I know everywhere, it seems like several people, I know Manny else was on the National School Board Association experience, and then also the Spring Law Conference, they were talking about the Leandro case. So I know that's an issue now with everything going on in society and in the public's eye. So I didn't know if maybe we could have some time, Dr. Mills, to have it presented to us at some point.
We can
in one
put
of our
that on a
meetings.
future agenda.
Mhm.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next on our agenda, student fees for 2021-2022 school year. This is Dr. Wilson again, or is?
Dr. Wilson can start us on this one.
So you have in your packet the student proposed fees for the 21-22 school year, and you have a comparison to what the fees were this current school year and what the fees will be in the future. And this is in accordance to our board policy 4600. Once the board has approved it, it will be published on the website.
All right.
There are a few changes, but they're very minor. The changes in the yearbook, there are a few with, such as at Rockridge, the yearbook went from $18 to $20, just a few here and there. The other is that the tech fee would also be at the elementary school, whereas in the past it had not.
With a yearbook fee, were there yearbooks for last year?
There were some schools that
Some.
were able to do so. It really just makes a difference at the students' interest.
So despite pandemic and being remote, some schools did put together a yearbook for their students.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I was under the impression that, that wouldn't be something that would have occurred, but good to know. All right. Any questions or comments in regard to the proposed fees for the 2021-2022 school year? Mrs. Boyette?
Okay, I see that you pointed out that we're going to charge a tech fee at the elementary school, which we've not done in the past because they didn't have the technology. And to qualify for the reduced fee of $20 or $25, you have to have completed a free or reduced lunch form and been approved.
That's another incentive, isn't it?
There you go.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Yes. So in the asking for that information, this is a prime example of why it's important for that application to be filled out.
Yes, ma'am.
And it is different because we had not had elementary before, so, okay. Any other discussion or comments or questions?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Boykin?
I move that we accept the student fees for 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Boykin, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve the student fees for 2021-2022 school year. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Next for our action is a review of legal services. Dr. Mills.
Board members, your retainer agreement expires soon with current legal counsel. Attached a new retainer agreement. So we're going to be consistent with what has been the past.
Now,
The difference is that it will be over a 4-year period, so we would not have to revisit it annually. We have not made any changes during the pandemic, some other services, so trying to bring this to you.
May I ask, we looked in the informational piece of the agenda, the policy regarding legal, regarding board attorney, and that was for 4 years, but it was pending the second read, which would be next month. Would we need to take action to waive a second read, go back and do a second read, waive a second read for that today if we are looking to take action on the review and awarding of a contract at this point.
Let's go back and look.
Because board policy 2610 that we looked at revising, that was just the first read today.
The language you have is shall be for no more than 4. In the revised policy that was first read.
And this suggested we begin on July 1, if that matters.
Okay, so that we would have taken action in the next meeting.
Or our action, if you go with this, would pending approval of that policy. I don't know.
All right.
4 years.
All right. Are there any questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Green?
I would vehemently disagree with the 4-year retainer agreement. In 2017 to 2018, we spent approximately $435,727.50 on legal fees. 2018, there was a decrease to $354,379.75. 2019-2020, we spent $455,512.60. And then just recently, we looked at our budget and approved a budget of $695,000. Based on this this steady increase in variance in how much money we're paying our attorneys, I feel uncomfortable entering into a 4-year agreement. I would be in favor of a 1-year agreement. And I think that at an appropriate time, we need to investigate other, we need to put out a request for proposal. And I don't disagree, Schwartz and Shaw does a great job, but there are other attorneys and other avenues that I feel like it would be advantageous for the board and for the citizens of Wilson County if we explored additional options that could provide the same service at a smaller amount of money. And I feel like I'm talking in a stadium now.
Well, for some reason, there's now a reverberation that's occurring. I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. Try that. That door.
Okay.
I think it was coming through there.
All right, Mr. Breen has made his comments. Are there other comments or questions?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Boykin?
I agree with Mr. Breen that that the rising cost of our legal fees is concerning. But I did have one question. As far as, yeah, we're getting billed at a rate of $170 an hour. Is that including drive time from Raleigh to Wilson and from Wilson back to Raleigh?
If I remember correctly, that was not including drive time. Am I correct, sir?
For the things that are in part of the retainer services, it's not included. It's not extra. For other trips, it's included for things that are not part of the retainer.
Okay.
So for like this board meeting tonight, there's no time included for that.
But for example, when we have the facilities meeting, it would be?
No, it would not.
So special board meetings are not included in drive time?
Right.
But administrative hearings and other things that would be included.
If it's an hourly rate matter, then it would be included.
And if it's the monthly bond motions that we have to hear, that's, the drive time also has to be included, correct?
Right, that's included.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Mercer?
There's no question, it's a large amount, but I think we get a lot for it, and it's hard to measure sometimes the prevention that occurs. Litigation can be expensive for us, and if we can get guidance from someone that's as knowledgeable as that firm is, it's hard to measure how much time, trouble, and money we're saving. I do know that on the advice, we saved hundreds of thousands of dollars on the fees that we were being charged for the spiking in retirement. Because and when I say saved, there were other districts that paid and then found out they didn't have to, and we were advised not to pay. So to me, it very likely we could have paid and not get our money back. But there are other things that they do, and forfeitures of bonds and things of that nature that on the other side, it's just not a matter of looking at how much money we paid, it's weighing out what we've saved. And when we get guidance on avoiding litigation, especially around the exceptional children's programs, they're helping us provide better service too, in my opinion. And it's expensive, but I think we get what we pay for. And be it a one-year contract and renewed or whatever, I'm very much in favor of staying with Schwartz and Shaw because I feel like they have protected us. I've never felt threatened personally or board-wise that we were going to be underrepresented. So while I understand the interest may be for less money, I want to, and I feel like we've been getting what we paid for. And if we get someone that'll work for less, I'm afraid that'll be the case also. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Mrs. Powell?
Yes, ma'am. I also, agree that over the years, with all the cases we have, Schwartz and Shaw, they have handled it with excellence. I know looking at the fees, as Mr. Green was saying, looking at the $170, $7,000, excuse me, not $70 per hour for consultation may be a lot, but when you think about, a lot of times you get what you pay for. And, they're knowledgeable, they're experienced, they've been with us, I don't know how many years, because I've only been on the board myself for 7 years. And I've not had any complaints as far as I know. And I'm always of the mentality, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I have no problem with retaining the attorneys we have now. I mean, if you, I know sometimes people feel like you can do better when the grass is not always green on the other side. Sometimes you can do better if you get someone new. And, it's hard to say because we don't know. But as far as what I've seen and what I know for myself and since I've been on the board, I am clearly happy with where we are now with Schwartz and Shaw.
Mrs. Boyette, did you have any comments, questions, please?
I would be inclined to be in favor with a one-year contract.
All right. Mrs. Barnes?
In the one-year contract, that would be from this June to next, or just July rather, to June of 2022, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's what she is saying. A one-year contract.
Board policy allows for 4 years. I would be committed to 4 years because Shaw and Schwartz have met their commitment to provide outstanding legal service. And I do know as a board member, this is my third term, that they have saved us a lot more than what we would have gotten, I think, having another, I guess, set of board of attorneys. And there's an expression that says good seafood is not cheap and cheap seafood is not always good. But I believe that good advice and service is not cheap. And sometimes what's cheap is not always good. So even though we have some firms in Wilson, I think that we could investigate for the long term. They have provided us with what we have needed. And I think that I would be in favor of the 4-year contract.
And Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I didn't say what year. You didn't, I'm sorry, I completely answered the question, but I'd be fine with the 4-year period also.
Okay. You know, as we let contracts from time to time, we've had serious contracts where we've never ever thought about just a 1-year extension. Whether it was banking, we go with our bank for a period of years, not just a year. With our, we do our audit firm, we have done in multiple years. And I see no reason why we should not have a 4-year contract with whatever attorney that we have. I agree with the comments that have been made as to the effectiveness that we have had from Schwartz and Shaw, the outstanding legal performance that they have done for us, that they have saved prices of everything go up, but we are looking at, and what Mr. Schwartz is saying is that they are seeking for the 4 years. They're not asking for an increase this year in a hourly retainer fee, but for consideration of future years. And everybody, whether it's in building, whether it's in banking, whether it's whatever, when we have let contracts with banking entities, our fees have changed. But at issue right now is the 4-year, and I am in concurrence that a 4-year contract would be in order for Schwartz and Shaw.
For what it's worth, Madam Chair, and I
Yes.
feel like I already know where this is going, but I would just like to put out there, just picking a year, the 2019, 2020. For $455,000, we could hire 2 attorneys to sit right in this building with a paralegal and give them benefits to do nothing but attend to our needs.
Well,
And while I understand that we're comfortable with Schwartz and Shaw, and if we did an RFP at some point, and whatever comes down the pipe comes down the pipe, but we could, Cumberland County, one of the most populous counties and largest school districts in this state, has a board attorney, and they do not pay $695,000 a year, and they do not budget $695,000 a year.
All right.
What do they pay, Mr. Briggs, just for my information?
The last time I checked, I think and this was in 2006 when I worked for their board attorney, I think he was at 110, maybe?
In 2006?
Yes, ma'am.
But that was 14 years ago, and you have no idea as to what their current price is, so.
Well, let's look it up.
We don't know the quality of the work that particular law firm was given.
It's just a guy. It's the guy who works for the school system.
All right, well.
It's their board attorney.
I think this is a conversation that is open for exploring at some point, but right now we are looking at the agreement for Schwartz and Shaw at this time. And I know that you are not, and this is your bailiwick in the area of law, but what I've been hearing in the comments is that the board is satisfied with the work done by Schwartz and Shaw. And the comment has been made, you get what you pay for. The comment's been made for Mrs. Barnes. Good seafood is not cheap, and cheap seafood is not good. So that still boils down to, it's all in what you pay for. So the chair will entertain at this time, if there is no other discussion. The chair will entertain a motion in regard to the status for Schwartz and Shaw to be retained as the board's attorney with a 4-year agreement.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mercer?
I move that we approve a 4-year agreement between the Wilkes County Board of Education and Schwartz and Shaw for the provision of legal services.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Mercer, seconded by Mrs. Powell, that the board approve the retainer agreement for Schwartz and Shaw for a 4-year period beginning July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2025. Is there further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Boyette?
I'd like clarification. Our board policy for a first reading was to extend it for 4 years. So my question is, how can we approve a 4-year contract when we haven't changed the board policy, which is for 1 year?
Mrs. Boyette, I think that is within our purview to do that. And what we were doing with the first read was putting it out there. I asked the question before this discussion started, was this to be contingent on the first read that we just had for that very question, policy 2610. The policy does not preclude us from having a 4-year agreement, in my estimation. And I asked, was it going to be necessary, because this was coming up, if we needed to waive a second read, or if we would still go ahead with the policy, with the action to have a second read at the next meeting. There was no response to the question that I raised. The board contract with the 4-year provision with Schwartz and Shaw would begin in July 1, which would be after the second reading of policy 2610.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mercer?
do I need to amend the motion to include providing that the
Pending.
new policy is in fact passed on second reading?
I'm going to defer to legal counsel on that. The maker of the motion is asking, does he need to defer the final action until after the second read of policy 2610?
You could make it contingent upon approval of the second reading of the policy if you wanted.
Okay.
Okay. I want to make that, I want to amend it by adding that decision is contingent upon the approval upon second reading of that policy.
Is the seconder of the motion amenable to that change?
Approval of the policy on second reading.
Yes.
Yes.
Second.
Okay. So the motion is that the board approve the retainer agreement with the firm of Schwartz and Shaw for a 4-year period beginning July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2025, pending the results of the second read of Board Policy 2610, Board Attorney. Any other comments or questions?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Boykin?
could we do this so that it has a do not exceed clause in it? so that us as the board can keep tabs on what our expenditures are as far as legal fees,
When you say a do not extend,
or do not exceed. So, I mean, you would cap it at, say, $400,000. From that point, we'd have to reconvene and say, all right, our costs are overrunning. Let's address this again.
Mr.
Excuse me.
Mr. Boykin, there are times when our costs do exceed based upon legal issues, and usually they are exceptional children's issues and cases that are brought. So if we're in the middle of a case and then you're going to say you're exceeding the cap that has been set, are we going to then stop, or are we going to have to regroup all over again?
Well, you could approve additional monies.
Okay.
But that way, you wouldn't be looking at a $650,000 bill this year, $750 next year. But, we've got a cap in there. We can always give them more money to proceed.
I think we get billed monthly and it's itemized, I believe, so we do have one. It's not like we get surprised at the end of the year thing. And I think I don't know what options we would have if we were not pleased with the way it was going. But we are aware as the year passes. I mean, we get a monthly statement.
Who sees that statement?
The superintendent
I do.
and
Ms.
the
Wilson
finance officer.
And Dr. Wilson, we review them monthly.
All right. Are we ready for the question? Those in favor of the motion, please record your answer. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Nay.
Mr. Boykin?
No.
Mr. Breen?
I'd just like to point out, before I cast my vote, for those playing along at home, the county attorney for the county of Cumberland makes $188,329.78 per year, and nay.
Dr. Fitch? Aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries 4-3 with Mr. Breen, Mrs. Boyette, and Mr. Boykin casting the dissenting vote. We're now down to draft policy 7331, publication or creation of materials or other products by employees. This is a second read policy. Dr. Mills or Dr. Wilson.
So the policy that you have before you is the one that we shared last meeting?
Yes.
And one of the questions that Ms. Boyette brought up was about the teachers to pay teachers.
Yeah.
And I talked with Ms. Cornetto regarding that, and she shared that in that first paragraph, that would be counted as a part of it. Without spelling out specifically, teachers pay teachers, that was the concern that if we say a particular company or organization, we may limit ourselves.
Okay, so point out the lines that you're referencing that would cover that. I understand not saying one agency, but am I understanding that you're saying that they could?
Yes.
All right, can you help me understand what lines that's in?
I think it was in the first paragraph, but it may be in the first letter A, the ownership of materials or products. And then in letter B on line 39, talks about the request for waiver, so if a teacher did need to do that.
I think your first part was line 15. The board recognizes that employees have sole ownership. Is that the point that you had made previously, Mrs. Boyette?
Okay, let me read that.
It goes through line 17.
I'm reading and it says without any use of school resources. And I'm thinking if a teacher was writing a lesson plan for an elementary book out of that she used the library book to read the lesson plans, how picky are we going to be about use of school resources? But looking at the application, line 39, where they are able to request a waiver, I think that it's a little much that if you want to sell a lesson unit that you've written on, give me a children's book title.
Charlotte's Web.
Charlotte's Web, that you would have to write and request permission to sell that for $10 on somewhere. I think that's getting picky, but not to the point that I'm going to ask that the policy be revised.
One of the things that Ms. Coronado and I talked about is that a lot of the work that our teachers are doing now, maybe different than what happened in years past, is that they're working in professional learning communities. And so a part of that request would be if there are 2 or 3 people working together, that one individual would not take that lesson plan and then make a profit off of it, whereas several people work together. Very different than if the individual worked independently on it. That was to protect also the other people who worked on the project at the school level.
Have we had any issues?
None has been brought to my attention that we've had.
I mean, I've not heard of any.
We've had more teachers who have purchased from Teachers Pay Teachers than publishing. We've not had any issues, but again, has a lot to do with if there were other people in the project and creating the materials. They would have more of an issue.
So were the changes that you were asking for, Mrs. Boyette, been addressed in the current revision?
I didn't see a current
We did-
revision. They didn't revise.
We
They did not revise it.
Right, we did not. It would be noted in blue if there were any revisions. And again, that was based on our discussion.
Well, you know, when I read the pre-season, it said encloses the drafted policy in red and blue. And when I looked at it, I didn't see any blue.
That's my error.
So there were some minor changes that were made?
No, ma'am.
No, not
No,
at
ma'am.
all. Okay.
We talked about it, Ms.
Okay.
Cornell and I talked about it, and she was taking her information from working with other districts as well who had some of the same concerns.
All right. So Mrs. Boyette, since there were no changes that were made, you still had the question that you raised at the last discussion.
Yes, and that's where I was asking for the clarification in this one. And she's pointed out, Dr. Wilson has pointed out that they would have to apply for a waiver to be able to sell anything that they had written. And my request had been for a nominal amount of money. And you've explained that, Ms. Cornetta, and you discussed and chose not to do that.
Okay. So are
So
there,
it's not to recommend to do that.
That's
in other
right,
words.
that's right.
So-
Yes, ma'am.
so are there any other questions or points in regard to policy 7331? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion in regard to draft policy 7331, publication or creation of materials or other products by employees. This is a second read. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I move that we approve draft policy 7331, publication of or creation of materials and other products by employees as a second read.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Barnes, was that seconded by Mrs. Powell, that we approve draft policy 7331, publication or creation of materials or other products by employees as a second read. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Next is revised policy 7410, teacher contracts.
I do not recall there being any revisions needed for this particular policy.
All right. Members of the board, no changes since the last meeting of the first read. What is your pleasure in regard to policy 7410, teacher contracts as a second read?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Breen?
I move we approve policy 7410.
All right.
So,
It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve the revised policy 7410, teacher contracts as a second read. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously.
Madam Chair,
Dr. Mills?
Ms. Horson has reminded me that the previous policy, 7331, requires us to make a motion to remove the existing professional publishing policy.
What was that?
Do we have others that need to be removed? I was
There's one.
hoping to take,
We can do them all
That
at once if
at
you want
one
to do that.
time.
Just want to remind you.
yes,
Okay.
thank you. The question was if we needed to, that we need to go back and remove policy in relation to 7331, but we also have removal of some policies
For this last one.
in relation to the other policies that we are discussing.
Yeah. This last one classified.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So we are now at revised policy 7940, classified personnel. There were no other changes since the last read. What is your, are there any questions? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion in regard to revised policy 7940.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Breen?
I move we adopt policy 7940 and remove policy 4001.
so,
It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve, adopt revised policy 7940, classified personnel, and remove policy 4001. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Members of the board, we've just rescinded policy 4001. I think there is a rescission needed in regard to policy 7331, and I'm not sure about policy 7410.
No, you don't need anything on that. You need a motion to rescind policy 3244/4244.
3244 slash
4244.
4244. Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion in regard to the rescinding of policy 3244 slash 4244.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell,
I move that we rescind policy number 3244/4244.
Second.
it has been moved by Mrs. Powell, seconded by Mr. Boykin, that we rescind policy 3244 and slash 4244. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch? Aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I move that the Wilson County Board of Education go into closed session to consider confidential personnel matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and 6 and 115C/319 through 321 to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A1 and North Carolina General Statutes 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 U.S.C. 1232G to establish or give instructions concerning the Board of Education's negotiating position concerning a potential acquisition and or lease of real property provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A5 and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A3.
Second.
Was that Mrs. Powell?
Yes.
Yes.
It has been moved by Mrs. Barnes, seconded by Mrs. Powell, that the Wilson County Board of Education go into closed session to consider confidential personnel matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and 6 and 115C-319 through 321. To consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and North Carolina General Statutes 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20, United States Code 1232G, to establish or give instructions concerning the Board of Education's negotiating position concerning a potential acquisition and or lease of real property as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A5, and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A3. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please. Let's record your vote. Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned for closed session.